She lived with her father, no mother around. And a handsome prince came from a far off land and asked for her hand in marriage. And the father gave her hand in marriage to the handsome prince, and off they went. And he turned out to be an evil bird king who lived on the top of a mountain and kept her sort of in a dungeon when he went away, so that she, And the father got to hear of this, and one time when the evil bird king, I mean, it's all a matter of perspective, was away, the father came and saved Sedna, took her down the mountain. They got in a boat and rowing across the lake or the sea, and the evil bird king comes back, beats his wings, causes a big storm, and father can think of nothing to do to save himself than throw Sedna overboard, sacrifice Sedna, and which he does. And she doesn't want to die, so she hangs onto the side of the boat. And so the father takes an axe and chops off her fingers one at a time till she can't hold on anymore. And then she sinks to the bottom of the ocean, and she becomes the goddess of the food supply, and all of her fingers become the seals and the walruses and the fish that it's an Inuit myth, that the Inuit people live off. And the Inuits, their gods and goddesses are not dead and in heaven like ours tend to be. And so Sedna's still alive. She didn't die. There was no, the painful experience was grabbing hold of the boat and trying to stay in the reality that she was already in. I look at the sort of the sinking in the water as transcendence. She transcended that experience, painful experience, family experience, relationship experience. And she transcended that and she became a goddess. So she transcended to a higher level of consciousness. And the Inuit people had to look after her from then on and make sure that her hair was combed and so on, so that she didn't send storms and they couldn't go out and fish. So she's still part of the community, obviously an important part. So people tend to fixate on that sort of painful experience there, but really we have to be counterintuitive. We're on the spiritual path when we're in the water. She's thrown into the spiritual path. Sedna's always trying to get us onto the spiritual path. And if we are counterintuitive and we let go of pain early, so first finger, let go. Don't wait for all the fingers to be chopped off. But we tend to hang on. And we won't let go because we're responsible and we want to deal with the problem and we're going to solve it and so on. And we can't solve Sedna problems. We have to let go. Saturnian solutions won't solve Sedna problems.
Yeah, it's a great expression, actually, Al. That's a really good expression. It's letting go of any kind of security, tangible security that we've known in the past, isn't it? And just releasing to the infinite.
Yes, exactly. Which is so hard to do. So.
I understand that sailors still have to request safe passage from Sedna to make sure that they're safe when they're crossing the Arctic waters.
That's it.
It wasn't it when Sedna initially, I think it was initially when she went into Gemini, there was that tragedy with the Titan submarine.
Oh, right.
Because they hadn't requested safe passage from Sedna.
No, or from any authorities. They'd actually gone their own way and done it how they wanted to. Yes, and that's exactly a Sedna experience where we're really being pushed to grow. Unfortunately, those people, they're growing in the next life. That life obviously came to an end there, and so on. And this is the kind of Sedna experience. To transcend, we stay alive by transcending. But if we keep hanging on, there's the axe. It's not going to work, and death is sort of the ultimate sort of part of that. We are forced to let go. With Sedna, there's a forcing to let go one way or another.
Yeah, but what I love about Sedna is, and I've been talking about this for the last couple of years, to me she's one of the biggest symbols we have for metamorphosis, and I think that's being reflected in our own internal biology right now as we become more crystalline, but also in these big shifts of consciousness that we're having as we move further towards the light body. And so many people are talking about this, but I think Sedna is the biggest symbol we have of this transition that we're going through, because it's being ignited by Uranus right now. All these convergences are so clear into a different state of being, because she moved from being a victim into something really quite transcendent, didn't she? Much, because the whales and the dolphins, and you will know this better than I do, Alan, are supposed to be 15th dimensional, aren't they? They're helping to lead this evolution for humanity. So actually, she went from victimhood to sovereignty, in fact.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's the beauty of it. And so we have to just let go and allow that transcendence to enable that. It's so simple, but it's so hard. And I encourage nurturing our sense of humour. Is the way to do that. A sense of humour is a wonderful tool on the spiritual path.
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably quite tough when her fingers are being chopped off, but not shy in this myth, that we have to go way beyond that and recognise, that is an illusion too.
Yes, it's an illusion too, and it's a getting rid of that's all the unconscious stuff So the Sabian symbol for the discovery degree of Sedna is a woman emptying an old bag out the window in the sunshine.
Gosh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. So, and we have to empty the bag. We have to empty the bag of all the ego stuff, all of the sort of unconscious stuff, which is what she was going through up till she let go of the boat. And then just rest in the sun. Often with Sedna we feel there's a lot of work that we have to do to grow. It's soul growth, and we do have to do work, and we often resist it, and so we wait until we're given that push that we just have to do it. But the more we embrace it and sort of put the ego bag out the window and sort of make the space for whatever is happening right now in our lives, then that growth goes a lot easier.
So you're seeing Sedna as a group soul consciousness elevation?
No, the new one, Leela Kohonua, is the group soul consciousness.
Okay.
Shall we transition there already?
Yeah, well, let's stick with your views on Uranus coming to contact Sedna, because they're already exactly at 1 degree of Gemini, aren't they? Not to the minute, but to the degree right now, but they're exact to the minute next May. So, share a little about how you feel about that conjunction, Alan.
Well, so Uranus is going retrograde, I think, in a week or the end of this week, and they're within 20 minutes conjunction. Well, Uranus and Gemini is all about sort of consciousness growth, I'm going to say. Gemini is kind of consciousness, and Uranus is growth, and so we are all growing in consciousness hugely during this Uranus in Gemini. And Sedna is soul growth. Sedna is what our soul really wants to grow through. The experiences that we're having in our life, they're all soul experiences if we approach them that way, if we see them as being soul growth experiences. And our soul has chosen this incarnation particularly to do something, to grow in some way. It's here for a reason. Everything that's happening in our life is here for a reason. And we tend to sort of hang on to what we know or not engage with the soul growth just because it's too powerful and maybe we're not ready but so whatever's happening is soul growth. And now with Sedna and Gemini, there's a real consciousness push in that soul growth. We've been in Taurus. It's all been about values. It's been about material, sex. Is that all, or is it more spiritual? We've had this sort of dichotomy going on. And so there's been a huge awakening to spirituality through that process. There's been a huge material sort of indulgence too, and that's part of it. There's a push. Sedna builds up. There's pressure that builds up in our lives that pushes us towards the soul growth that we need to do. Yep. And the material stuff in Taurus is part of that as well.
And I think of Gemini very much with Uranus there too, as real quantum leaps in our understanding of neural networks as well. How consciousness works from that point of view. So it's not going to be linear. It's going and Sedna's myth is so much about surrendering to the flow of what's coming in to help us as well, rather than the attachment, as you say. It's the surrender. As a flowing with, and also there's a fluidity which comes in obviously with Sedna's myth that I think is very much part of how we're going to start to understand our reality, that's much less linear and mechanical and structural than we've ever believed. It's more malleable and flowing, and we have to learn to flow with all of that. Just as Sedna did in the myth. So, that's going to be fascinating. And yes, there'll be lots of technology that's going to help us make these jumps and understandings. But Sedna and Uranus are really being helped so powerfully by that trine to Pluto, which is long term over the next few years, which is the planet of power and transformation, and also the quincunx 150-degree aspect to Haumea, another dwarf planet all about regeneration. So, that, as I call it, the wonky triangle, is so powerful in terms of where we're headed in a human metamorphosis.
Absolutely.
I think they're huge leaps in terms of spirituality and consciousness that we're going through right now. And what adds to it is this fairly recent discovery about Leela Kohonua, which are you feel ready to transition to that, Alan, and how that feeds into the picture?
Absolutely. I'll just go from what you were just talking about with Sedna and the flow and how the sort of, I don't think you used the word multidimensional, but there's a multidimensional sense to that journey that Sedna's going through. And Leela Kohonua is that multidimensional consciousness that comes from that soul journey, where we see that the journey goes through many spaces, and it meets many others through that experience, and we have sort of a soul field that we are part of, and we have an inner understanding and a sort of guidance system that we can tune into in that, of the longer journey that we're on for a longer time. I mean, that's given. Let me just step back and give a few pointers as to how this has come about. I've been leading a research group at NCGR about the Leela Kohonua, and so and we get the meaning obviously from things like the myth and the orbital physicality and the Sabian symbol, and for the discovery degree and so on. So the beautiful thing with, it's all beautiful. One of the beautiful things with Leela Kohonua is most of our planets, deities, are personified. They're personified. They're male, female. They're, you know, and Leela Kohonua is a flock of birds. It's a migratory flock of birds. It comes from the Hawaiian creation chart, and it was named by a committee of librarians on the planet in Hawaii, because the observatory that discovered it was on native Hawaiian land, and that was the deal, that the community would get to sort of be involved in any of the discoveries. So quite lovely in terms of this sort of group or soul field sort of, and it's a life form. The literal translation of Leela Kohonua is life form.
Oh, that's...
And so,
yeah, because again, I'm quoting from my good friend, US astrologer Martha Alter Hines, because she's done some research into this, and she had found that Lili was to fly, and Akua was away, and Honua was Earth. So it's the golden plover bird, isn't it? That migrates from Alaska to Hawaii. And it's that migration that it seems to be describing. And it's got a 33,000-year orbit as well, Alan.
So it has.
The length of Sedna, the longest orbit we're aware of any orbiting body.
Of anyone, yes. So it's a sednoid. These are the new class of planets like Sedna that have these huge elongated orbits like comets. And yes, 33,000 years, so 3 times Sedna. Amazingly, magically, Sedna will be at her closest point in her orbit in 2076. We're in this close phase, which is an important part of the sort of the Sedna growth thing. At the last time we were at this point, we had the Neolithic revolution. So all over the planet, we started growing vegetables rather than hunting animals. And all of our civilization has come from that point. So we're at a key point in our growth, with that Sedna coming to her closest point. It'll be in Cancer in 2076.
And Leela Kohonua arrives two years later, doesn't it, to its brilliant 2 years, 2028. I mean, that's incredible considering the length of the orbits, isn't it?
Isn't it? And it's not like that's going to happen again and again. This is a one-off sort of thing, or it's because those orbits are not linked at all. So we're in a very special phase where both our soul growth is going through a huge change because of changes in society and needing to live differently. The Neolithic revolution enabled us to settle down in villages and towns, and so we could grow more food than we needed, so we could specialize, and that's all of our civilization has come from that change. And so we're going through a change in society at the moment that's enabling us to have more time. And over this next 100 years, it'll take time for this to play out. And at the same time, we've got the Leela Kohonua one coming to the closest. And yes, so it's a migratory flock of birds. That takes 3, 4, 5 days for them to do that flight. It's a huge flight. There's a cellular change, apparently, according to the
Wow, that's
scientists,
really interesting.
that
It
happens that
works.
enables them to do it, to go, and it's light that makes the key timing. And so they fly for 3 days. Half their brain sleeps while the other half flies, and then they swap over. Parts of the brain doing it to enable it. They can see magnetic lines, they can see ultraviolet, they can see infrared, they can see ley lines. They've got an orientation that they can do. They use visual cues. So they've got a real sort of sensory ability. And Leela Kohonua gives us this sort of sensory ability in our huge missions that we're on. Maybe lifelong missions, maybe many life missions. We're on missions, just like the birds. And we can use our extrasensory abilities we know when we're on the right path. We know when we're, if we're open to it, we know to turn left today because there's going to be an accident if I turn right, sort of thing. We do have a sort of a sense of our soul path and how it interplays with all the other souls.
But there's this sense of multidimensionality, which is so fascinating, isn't it? And the vastness of the cosmos that this brings in as well. I mean, there's no sense of bird brain here, is there? Even though they're tiny little birds, they're way ahead of us. So that's what's fascinating, kind of opening up these other senses for us as humanity. And what's interesting for me as well, Alan, and again, credit to Martha, that both Sedna's myth and Leela Kohonua, they both start in the Arctic. They both begin in the Arctic. So there's something that seems important about that polar region that may become maybe part of New Earth as the climate changes as well.
Right.
And Martha also mentioned, I think it's worthy of sharing what's fascinating. Yeah, she was the bird was very much named in the creation myth. And the Queen of Hawaii apparently was imprisoned when the US government colonized Hawaii. And she translated the creation myth that one of her ancestors had originally written. And she translated that in prison. And the sense she got from the bird migration was a coming home. We're coming home. And gosh, I'm going all goosebumpy now. So there's a sense of humanity coming home, humanity landing again in the place where it should be rightfully. There's a sense of that. So there's some layers of meaning coming in there as well, which I think is fascinating. And apparently the name of the bird as well is also Hawaiian for where the sky meets the earth.
Yes.
And so that kind of has echoes of Pluto and Aquarius, where we're reaching out to the cosmos and going deeper and deeper in our understanding of the cosmos. And it also apparently, and I want to credit Philip Sedgwick, the great researcher and astrologer, he talks about it representing global mind or infinite possibilities.
Yes.
Infinite possibilities because it's so vast in its migration and it senses, as you've outlined, it's just and this is what we're moving to, I think, if we can tune into it, just infinite possibilities. We're no longer stuck in the old, dense, limited 3D, going round and round the hamster wheel. This opens up something incredibly vast. So the more we can tune into this mythology, the better off we're going to be, I think, because it's kind of leading us outwards, isn't it, into those possibilities. And inwards, actually. Outwards and inwards. And inwards.
That's it. Exactly. Yes. No, totally. Absolutely. Yeah. And as we embrace it, the Leela Kohonua is at this closest point, which is key for us then on both the Sedna and the Leela Kohonua on this next phase of our growth as human beings.
So even though we think the perihelions and 2076 and 278 are an age away, that's a drop in the ocean if you're dealing with orbits of 33,000 years, isn't it? I mean,
That's it.
they're approaching. That's the most important thing. They're approaching us now with all of these other planetary changes at the same time. So when was Kohonua, it's going to be so hard to pronounce that, when was that discovered, and what does the discovery chart tell us, Alan, and what's the Sabian symbol for that too?
All right, so 2015 was the discovery year. And the Sabian symbol is a person successfully expressing themselves in two realms at once.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
Isn't that just perfect? And is there anything else that the discovery chart tells us that can feed into the meaning?
Now, I was just this morning, one of Xenia Schuyler on the research group has put together a discovery chart interpretation, which I was just putting into. We're doing a course at the Dwarf Planet University on the Leela Kohonua in a few.
I'll put the details below. Yeah.
Yeah. All good, all good. There's only 2 places left. It's full. It's almost full with 48 at the moment people on it. So
wow.
It's very popular. And I'm just putting yes. So look, the discovery chart. I think I'd have to sort of talk more about another time. I don't think I'm really up enough to talk about it at this stage here. But come to the course. It'll be powerful.
There's something very beautiful about the natural world, I think. And again, Philip Sedgwick talks about it representing the preservation of our skies, our earth, and our waters. And, you know, with Sedna being linked to dolphin and whale and turtle energy, there's something very, very pure about this kind of transformation, this metamorphosis, that we are moving back to a sort of much more pure world where in a moment, almost toxicity and pollution seems to disappear. And I've always said I don't believe that we are going to have decades of cleanup. I just don't believe it. That's a 3D way to look at it. That's you could do A, then you could do B, then you could do C. I don't think it's going to be like that at all. I think we're going to have some, like, you know, there's a fungus that has been discovered, one on a rubbish tip, which just gorges on microplastics, and the other one that lives in the ocean, and they thrive on microplastics. You know, they're going to be things like this, and nature always runs ahead of a problem, I think, so they're going to be naturally occurring things like this that solve these problems, because the evolution not only of ourselves, but I believe of many species, is happening at a very rapid rate. You know, I believe we're changing at a cellular level, and it's so interesting about the myth of Leela Kohonua. Can I just picture that?
That's good.
I did it best the first time. That, you know, that teaches about this, and you know, the fact that I was listening to another gentleman, Dr. John Daly, who's a medical professional, and he was talking about this changing chromosomes that Cryon's talking about, Greg Braden has talked about. So now you have a medical professional who was working in the area of radiology, who can clearly see that our chromosome 2 and chromosome 7 were spliced together at some point in history. Greg Braden thinks it's about 200,000 years ago, and that's reinforced by Cryon. But to hear a medical professional saying that was very interesting as well. But that 24th chromosome is now coming back online, and that is our multi-dimensional chromosome. So it's so interesting that is starting to happen at the same time as this wonderful sednoid is filtering into our consciousness. Because my feeling is, and would you agree with this, Alan, that dwarf planets, sednoids, you know, trans-Neptunian objects, TNOs, are only discovered when our consciousness is ready to integrate them. Yeah. Because it's actually the outer discovery is simply reflecting an inner evolutionary process. Would you?
That's it. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. When we're ready, we find the symbol, and so it's. Yes, that's the beautiful thing, and absolutely, yes. I'm totally with you. That connection to a simpler, a more natural growth process is what we're in the new complexity of our world and our astrology with all these new planets. We're finding a simplicity and a naturalness. It's not like it's getting more and more and more sort of chaotic. It's actually getting simpler, and it's all fitting together in a more sort of multi-dimensional, fractal way.
It's more organic, isn't it? It's an organic intelligence which is unfolding. Because I do think there's one timeline which is more synthetic and technological and chaotic. I do think there's a timeline for a period of time that's following.
Oh, yeah.
But actually, I think humanity's, for many of us, the yearning is for simplicity. The yearning,
Yes.
Let's come back to the simple, the natural, organic, start to hear what the trees are saying, the animals are saying, the dolphins and the whales are saying. And that's where we've got to get to, because that's going to take us way further, in my view, than anything man-made, because the intelligence of the universe is way ahead of where we are.
Yes.
So there's a beautiful kind of tapestry which is starting to emerge out there. And are there any other sednoids which are coming into play, Alan, as well?
So we've got two others that we've discovered at the moment. One of them is still numbered, and I won't be able to remember that number. I don't think I can get the name. The other one's been nicknamed. I've got Mercury, Neptune conjunct, and I don't hold information.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
that.
I've got it by transit.
But there are two new ones, two other ones, but they haven't been named officially, and so I tend to wait till they've been named officially, because that gives us more to work with in terms of finding their meaning, the myth, and so on that comes from that. So. But yes, they are, and there's some talk in the sort of general sort of press about sort of Planet 9 and, is this Planet 9 being discovered and so on, because astronomers have thought that maybe these long orbits are because of a big planet that's out there that's pulling these other ones out and so on. And the thing with the new one, whose nickname escapes me, is that it goes the other way, and so it's the Planet 9 disproves Planet 9. So there is.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. So there is we can embrace the dwarf planets. There are planets there. We don't need to imagine planets anymore. That's what astronomers have been doing, and so and then looking. But now we can just work with what we've got. So, but the popular,
what I love is in your description of Leela Kohonua. That's better. That you describe her as a group soul consciousness, because that's really echoing Pluto in Aquarius as well. That it has this paradox of, we are going to discover our individual essence in a bigger way as we move through this period, but also how we can contribute to the whole, what our unique piece of the puzzle is that we can put back into the whole. And so this much greater sense of coming together as humanity, a sense of oneness, a sense of soul group consciousness, I think is very strong, and it's partly echoed by Pluto in Aquarius for the next 20 years.
And also I'd suggest by Haumea in wherever Haumea is in Scorpio, because Haumea is also about that sort of connection to the oneness of humanity, the magic of being alive and so on. And so that's the Pluto, Haumea, Sedna aspects that you were talking about earlier, that is really a signature of the times that we're in. Very much.
Yes, beautiful. And part of the myth of Homer, when her partner stole the not stole, he just took wild bananas for he and his people to eat. And he was going to be put to death by the autocratic ruler. And it was, which is pretty wild, isn't it? Because, the first food pickings were supposed to be for the special people, the elite people, the rulers. And so part of the way Homer overcame that challenge was she called together the community. She called in her spiritual help, but also the community. And without weapons, I don't know how they did it, but they overcame the autocratic ruler. And he was not put to death. So that's a real strong message of the need to come together in community.
She hid him in a tree.
Did she?
Yes, she was a tree, and she hid him in her.
Oh, beautiful! Right,
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that piece of the myth as well. That's absolutely beautiful. But again, she's all about the natural, isn't she? Her shamanic connection to the natural world and summoning wild food, even when the land was laid waste, with her magic stick, Macaline. You know, she's a terrific symbol of this instinctive flowing connection with nature and the earth. I mean, she's very beautiful.
Yeah, totally. And by extension through to Leela Kohonua, like you were just saying, that a person expressing themselves successfully in two realms at once, that the interpretation of that Sabian symbol has to do with, we see our soul reflected in the soul of others. So that soul group, that soul connection that you're talking about, we see our soul reflected, and we've got mirror neurons in our brains, and where we can sort of reflect somebody else, and so yes, that's how I think that soul field. We actually, in our interaction with the world, if we're looking for that soul connection that we have with people, we can find it, and we can see ourselves reflected in that.
And that's really, beautiful, because that way lies, excuse me, forgiveness and compassion, doesn't it? When you can see yourself reflected in others, that brings about a lot of unity, consciousness, compassion, forgiveness. There's a real bonding that comes together with people at that point, rather than this constant polarization that we've lived through in the 3D world.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that's the big sort of blessing that Leela Kohonua is bringing to us in these years, as we let go, do the Sedna thing of letting go of all of that nonsense that you're talking about there, which of course, as you're saying, will be sort of enlivened and be very active in these next years with the Uranus sort of period in Gemini and so on. And so we're all going through a sort of well, I want to say rebirth. That's how me. It's not really a rebirth, but there's a big change, big soul growth change happening for each of us in this next 6 months with the Uranus conjunction to Sedna. That's simplifying and enabling this connection that you're talking about. This sort of embrace of
that is music to my ears to hear about simplification, because usually society seems to be going in the other direction. But also, I think it's very exciting at the moment that Leela Kohonua is at 14 of Aries, and that's conjunct Salassia, isn't it? It's very tightly conjunct, because Salassia is at 12 of Aries. And Salassia, I think it would be lovely to hear you talk about Salassia, Alan. But I think of Salassia as photonic light, that shimmering sunlight on the seas, and photonic light, I think of her as light language, but she also has a very strong dolphin and whale connection as well, doesn't she? She's mermaid, isn't she? I think of her to Lemuria as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So is there anything you'd like to share about that and that conjunction?
I love Salassia. Yes, I mean, we've had actually, it's some months ago we had Venus, Leela Kohonua and Salassia all together. So we're coming through a big period of so Salassia, I look at her as higher love consciousness. So and what is a higher love consciousness? Well, it's all about, she's all about connection, intimate connection between people. And at the unconscious level, that's sort of sexuality, eroticism. Eroticism happens sort of, it's a physical thing, it's also a psychic thing. And so she works in that sort of psychic and physical connection area. And she's in a myth. She's the wife of Neptune. She was a sea nymph and gorgeous, and Neptune was besotted with her and sort of proposed marriage, and she said, "Oh," and disappeared into the depths, and he pined away, and then he sent his dolphin to negotiate and convince her, well, she'd be a goddess, and it would all be wonderful, and so on and so on. And so she was convinced, and she came back and married him, and he was unfaithful, and so the myth goes on and so on and so on. But that sort of negotiation process. She's attractive. She enables us, or Salassia enables us to be attractive or to attract an audience or a sort of a market or customers, and to make contact with those people. It's an intimate contact. We need to make intimate contact to do a chart reading, to sort of sell something to someone. It's an intimate contact, and we need to know the process. We need to know the negotiation that goes on. Salassia gives us, we know what part of the process we're in, and when we know what part of the process we're in, we know what to do next. And so we always know what to do next, and we can find the right time to do whatever it is we need to do with Salassia. And we can find true love at the top level. Maybe Neptune wasn't the true love, but it's a matter of the psychic contact. It's true love through psychic contact, and there's a light-heartedness with Salassia, a sort of rolling with the punches, making the best of things, being your best self at the top level, and all of that sort of, I love it, and that's the sort of the light on the water there. That's the sort of the sparkling sort of in her myth, so
beautiful fluidity, though, to the whole myth. It's very interesting because Salassia was exactly aspected by that solar eclipse in Libra. Was it last October, October 24th?
Exactly.
Because it was at 10 of Aries when the solar eclipse was at 10 of Libra, so it was exactly opposite. And it was interesting. I was with Veda Austin in a workshop together. We did a workshop together in Glastonbury, and the photography she was getting for crystallography was astounding because there were a lot of squiggles in it that looked like light language. And I mentioned that in a previous video, and I have a sense, I haven't kept track of this, but I have a sense that it was round about that time that a lot of people spontaneously started to speak light language. So I think there's something in that about us being able to access a higher frequency with Salassia to actually connect, to spontaneously, it's not something we learn in a book or go to classes with light language, it just downloads one day and we start to speak light language. So is the very high psychic connection, I think, with Salassia too, that's really exciting.
Totally.
So,
yeah, absolutely. She's a beautiful new planet for us. I think Ixion and Salassia are the two that I think are kind of most accessible for people, in fact. And so, that's
So they're two very different sides to Ixion, aren't they?
there are yes, and you would say some people would say that was Salassia too, because in terms of sort of the sexual, what is the word that I'm looking for that comes from Salassia? That's salacious. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yes. So the salacious side of Salassia, and with Ixion, there's the myth is sort of he's a bit of a monster in the myth, and but he's self-willed and he follows his heart and so on. And he doesn't learn from experience in the myth, but if we do learn from experience, we don't need to sort of get into repeated problems in the way.
I always have a sense of the positive expression of Ixion is kind of knapsack on his back, going beyond normal society and just following a simple joy to to create a whole new life for himself, and that so feeds into some of the other things you've been talking about this morning. That we just say, do you know what? I'm just stepping out of this mayhem and chaos, and I'm going to create a very simple, beautiful life, going back to nature and listen to the messages from the trees and the animals, and that's where I'm headed. And I think a lot of these dwarf planets and TNOs are actually helping us on that journey.
They are.
Really
and Ixion's Pluto's lawless brother in the same orbit as Pluto. And so, yes, stepping out, as you say, into these, it's the next one after Pluto. We step out and we have to be authentic. We have to be ourselves. That's what Ixion's encouraging. I look at Ixion as seeker consciousness. So it's, they're all good, even the ones with sort of dark myths. There's no good or bad in the Kuiper belt. That's a Saturnian construct. That's what I like to say. Works well inside Saturn. But
yeah, absolutely. So Alan, in terms of people finding these places in their own chart, because I think with Leela Kohonua, if you're alive now, or certainly an adult age, you'll be probably born with it in Pisces.
Yes. I
know Philip Sedgwick has some ephemerides that he produces.
That's right.
It's a very good source. And also Serenu, you can just put in the date and the time and get it for the day, for any day. You can get the dwarf planet. And some of the TNOs, and also Astro Gold, I think.
Astro Gold, you can do it, and Solar Fire. Those are the programs that will have it. Astro.com is also, you can also set up a free account at astro.com or just work as a guest there. You don't even have to set up an account, and you use the extended chart selection, and then you can find the dwarf planets and put them into your chart there. So I encourage people, go to astro.com is probably the easiest way. And the Serenu is good to find where it is at a particular point, but astro.com will give you the whole chart. So.
Fantastic. And anything else you'd like to share, Alan, before we close?
Well, I'd like to encourage people to search for Dwarf Planet University. Come to the website and just put your email address in the newsletter box and tune into my newsletter.
Which are really good. They're really good. And Alan publishes them very regularly.
Every week or so I try and put one out, and I'm selling the classes, and as I'm selling the classes I'm talking about the transits and the planets and so on. So it's a good way to get to know these new planets, even if you don't want to come to classes, and maybe after a while you might want to. And I run 6-week courses on each of them, and you study them in your own chart, looking at the house placement and the aspects and the transits, so the events that are happening in your life. and you really onboard these energies by doing it that way. So, and you do it with a group of people, and they're talking about it, we're all talking about it, and so in that discussion we sort of get a good understanding of how it all works. So.
Yeah, fabulous. As I said at the beginning, I know you're very much loved, and you know, huge spiritual pioneer and adventurer yourself into these vast realms of new consciousness, and you're really helping us. You're really helping us integrate this, you know, the concepts, the ideas that we really have to start to expand into. You know, listening to you, I can kind of feel this expansion of consciousness happening. As you know, I'm expanding out of the cosmos, and as I'm expanding outwards, as I say, I'm also expanding inwards, and it's a beautiful journey. So really, thank you for all the work you're doing in the world, Alan. It's very special. It's very rare, actually, what you're doing, and it's a massive legacy that you're leaving us. And I just want to thank you for that.
I've got Haumea Pluto conjunct in my 8th house in Leo, and I think that's the legacy I'm sort of working with there. So, yeah. Well, thank you for your work too, because you're doing beautiful work, and so you're